Welcome to the Kraken. I'm your host, Crazy Canuck. Today, we're going to be talking about a tool that you can use to help determine fact from fiction on the internet. Snopes.com is a tool that you can use to debunk internet rumors. I'm going to give you a brief breakdown of how the website works and a couple of case examples where we'll walk through how to actually use the website. Now, if you recall, the tools that I'll be giving you to do this can be described in one of two ways. First, we have the type of tool that you personally take information or a story or something that's been shared to you or something that you've heard and wade out there into the depths of the internet and find out for yourself whether you should believe and spread this story or whether you should be fighting against it. The second is the kind of tool that involves you trusting someone else to do this legwork for you. Now, Snopes falls into the second category. Snopes was something I was introduced to by a roommate in college who was using it to debunk crazy photographs that he found on the internet. And he'd call me in, we had like a little game, he'd show me some horrible grisly photograph and he'd tell me, hey, do you think this is true? And I'd go, I hope not. And he'd be like, Snopes.com, yes it is true. And I'd be like, God, I wish I hadn't seen that. He had a little bit more fun playing the game than I did. Anyway, Snopes.com has taken on a much larger role in recent years with this rise of fake news and the fact that people can just generate money from it. That shares on Facebook means money in the bank for these guys. It really encourages them to come up with stories that are crazy, hyper-partisan, and shocking. Shocking is what makes people share this stuff on Facebook. They see it, whoa! Share to everybody that I know. They have to know immediately. So today, we are going to be looking at two case examples on Snopes.com. I should qualify this. Today is January the 13th. You will be watching this on the 20th or later. Headlining Snopes.com on January 13th are two stories that I found particularly interesting. One is a story about El Chapo. We all remember El Chapo. El Chapo donating millions of dollars to the Clinton Foundation. According to the investigators of Snopes.com, the original story was published on January the 9th, 2017. States that over the weekend, which was January 7th and 8th, the founder of WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, gave a conference in front of a large number of media personnel where he told them about this breaking news story. There's a photograph included, which Snopes.com has determined was actually taken February of 2016. Furthermore, Snopes has found no evidence that Julian Assange gave any kind of news conference on that weekend. This is an example of one of the most effective ways to fact-check one of these stories, particularly one that uses real people and places. A public figure like Julian Assange, his whereabouts are tracked. People know where he is, people know what he does. You can look online yourself and try to find evidence that he was actually there. If you find multiple news sources talking about how Julian Assange was just giving this news conference and dropping bombshells of truth, maybe you start to believe this. Snopes goes deeper than that. Snopes did not find any evidence that Julian Assange, whether on a video conference or in person, was giving such a conference on that weekend, which severely weakens the credibility of this story. Snopes.com has examined the story and they have determined it to be fake. So, if you trust Snopes.com, then you believe this story to be fake. If you're a little bit on the fence about Snopes.com, maybe this is just one piece of evidence that you can factor into your overall assessment of this story. The second story I'm going to be looking at is about Donald Trump and his relationship to the media. The story is as follows. Donald Trump revokes the press credentials of 6 major news organizations: CNN, NBC, ABC, Univision, MSNBC, and the New York Times. These organizations ran stories against Donald Trump. This is why they've been selected for the story. Trump often refers to New York Times as the failing New York Times in his tweets. He calls CNN crooked, and in person, in video, during a conference, he yelled at CNN's Jim Scudo, "You're fake news." So there was a buzz around this issue. There was the groundwork in place for people to believe this story. But according to Snopes.com, this is false. The website that this story was published on carries a disclaimer that its stories are opinion, that its stories are sometimes comedy, that perhaps you shouldn't take all of their stories 100% true. But when all you're doing on Facebook is just reading the headline in the first 4 lines, going, ah, and sending it to people, should I make this face? And sending it to people, this type of story can be damaging. What do these stories have in common? They're sensational, and they feed into people's biases. They tell them what they already believe. People who are reading and sharing the El Chapo gives to Clinton story believe that Hillary Clinton is corrupt. This just confirms their bias. This gives them more evidence to shout at their friends, she's corrupt, she took money from El Chapo. How could you possibly still support her? Likewise, the Donald Trump story. People want to believe he's a dictator. People believed he was a dictator during the campaign. When they find evidence, wow, this is something a dictator would do, they run with it. They tell people about it. They share it with people. That's what these fake news sources rely on. So there you have it, a quick rundown of Snopes.com, a useful tool for determining fact from fiction on the internet. I'm your host, Crazy Canuck. Thank you so much for joining us, and as always, be good to each other.